Hi there. It's been a while. I hope my voice finds you with breath inside you and breeze to replenish it. My name is Grover. Today is Wednesday, July 30th, and this is another edition of Grover Reads the News. Now, when I was last with you, it was a month ago. I was in the midst of a big transition, and that transitioning to a place where I have working internet and a working brain took longer than expected. So, I'm glad to be back with you, and I am talking with you now next to a different swamp, in a place in Europe, in the Netherlands. I put a link at the bottom of the Substack in the show notes where you can read more about my transition on my main Substack blog. But we're not here today to talk about me. We're here to face the news together. In the time that I was not recording updates, a lot, and I mean a lot, happened in the US and around the world. For today, I'm going to stick with the main 4-block formula of updates, like I normally do. Some of them are big ones. That means there's some that didn't make it in, and we're here for intentional looking, not an exhaustive list. But I hope that you are taking care of yourself and checking on your people. And with that, let's hear some news. First, I have an update about United States federal funding bills. In early July, Congress passed a funding bill that will expand poverty and inequality and the already massive presence of policing and the military. The bill extends the 2017 tax cuts of the first Trump administration that privilege the wealthiest people and corporations. It makes steep cuts to Medicaid spending, the state-provided health care scheme for those on low incomes and disabilities, which millions of Americans use, many of whom don't realize it because it operates under state rebranded names such as Mass Health, Maine Care, Sooner Care, etc. The new funding package imposes work restrictions to receive the health care, an oxymoronic policy that has proven a failure over and over again when tried at the state level. Medicaid is the single largest funder of nursing home care for the elderly and disabled. So if you see an increase in your community of elders who definitely should be in medical facility and receiving care but are not, or very sick elderly people living unsheltered on the street, they are connected to this funding package passed by the Republican-led House and Senate. This budget increases spending for war by $150 billion and increases funds for immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE, by $100 billion. It reduces the Biden-era clean energy tax credits for things like electric vehicle charging and electric vehicles and solar panels, as well as cuts in food aid and cash assistance for families most in need. Next, I have an update from the United States about deportation and torture. Since I last updated in June, the Trump administration has quickly created a makeshift immigrant detention center in the Florida Everglades. The detention camp that people are calling Alligator Alcatraz is a mostly abandoned airstrip about 50 miles outside of Miami, filled with alligators, giant pythons, and disease-carrying mosquitoes all around it. NBC News spoke to Rafael Collado, a Cuban national who has been in the United States for decades, who said, "It's like a dog cage." He said a combination of floodwater from recent storms, limited access to showers, and poor sanitation have caused him to get fungus on his feet. Collado is held in a large cage with 32 other prisoners and describes mosquitoes swarming him all night as he tries to sleep. Florida state lawmakers, including Governor Ron DeSantis, provided the resources to stand up this site in less than 2 weeks. It operates on Miami-Dade County-owned land and is explicitly to support U.S. President Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. Civil rights lawyers say Alligator Alcatraz detainees have been barred from meeting attorneys, are being held without any charges, and that a federal immigration court has canceled bond hearings, reports the Associated Press. Next, I just want to give a heads up that I describe some disturbing things that are happening to people, including rape and torture. Dozens of Venezuelans that Donald Trump has deported to a brutal prison in El Salvador have been sent back to their home country under a bilateral deal to secure the release of Americans who are locked up in Venezuela, reports The Independent of the UK. Under the deal, more than 200 Venezuelans summarily deported to El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center, or CCOT, were flown to Caracas on Friday. In exchange, the Venezuelan government delivered 5 U.S. citizens and 5 lawful permanent residents back to American custody, says The Independent. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has accused El Salvador's regime and the Trump administration of violating human rights by locking up immigrants in what humanitarian groups describe as a tropical gulag and a concentration camp. The released Venezuelans are now able to speak up and to describe the torture conditions they lived through, including beatings, sexual assault, and being told to kill themselves. Gay asylum seeker to the U.S., Andre Hernandez Romero, reported gang rape by CCOT prison guards. Former prisoners described shackles so tight they bled, being denied food, regular mass beatings, and beatings for any slight noncompliance or for reporting complaints, reports NBC News. Rolling Stone released a long-form article recently highlighting the broad and growing network of organizations across the United States that are training people to respond to ICE's kidnapping of neighbors and raids on workplaces. Now, every day it seems there are new videos on social media of everyday people interrupting, recording, and dissenting to the arrest of neighbors in hardware stores and workplaces. Conditions for immigrants in the U.S. are terrifying right now, and also people are fighting back. The Rolling Stone article and all sources that I used to create the summary are linked in the show notes and at the bottom of the Substack. Next, I have an update about conditions in Gaza. The United Nations says that more than 1,000 people have been killed by government or contracted forces while they were seeking aid from the Israeli and U.S.-controlled aid distribution centers and other humanitarian convoys that have been the only source of aid distribution since May. Scores of Palestinians have died of starvation in recent weeks in a crisis attributed by humanitarian organizations and the UN to Israel's blockade of almost all aid to the territory. The World Food Program said that more than 90,000 people were in urgent need of treatment for malnutrition, and that 1 in 3 people were going without food for days. Amidst increased global pressure, including mass protests in cities around the world, and more countries, including Malta and Britain, saying that they will recognize Palestine as an independent nation, the Israeli military says it has begun a, quote, tactical pause in 3 densely populated areas. As of July 28th, at least 133 people have died from starvation in Gaza. More than half of them are children. Images of bodies hollowed out from hunger and dead, starved infants have shocked the world and led to a wave of global condemnation of Israel's conduct. Human rights groups in Israel have broken a countrywide taboo and accused the state of Israel of committing genocide against Gazans. But Salem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel released reports at a press conference in Jerusalem on Monday, saying Israel was carrying out, quote, coordinated, deliberate action to destroy Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip, unquote, reports Reuters and CNN reports increased anti-war and anti-starvation protests in Tel Aviv, Israel, that have increased over the last weeks. I'm just going to pause here for a moment to give room and name grief before moving on to hope and wonder. Finally, I have nature news about abundance after unprecedented weather events. The east coast of Australia has received more rain than has fallen in the past 100 years. And as massive floodwaters recede, eucalyptus trees are soaking up water and preparing for a mass blossoming that may help a critically endangered species survive. While the floods have been damaging for Australia's human residents, there's a silver lining for the native species of birds in the region. Specifically, the regent honeyeater, a beautiful yellow and black songbird whose number is only 300 birds left. They are considered critically endangered. They feed on the nectar of blooming eucalyptus and gum trees, and as these trees soak up an unprecedented amount of water, they're about to release epic blossoms, which will result in an epic feast for the endangered birds, hopefully fueling stronger survival in the year ahead. Dean Nichol, an expert on eucalyptus species, told ABC that the trees are highly adapted to extreme levels of moistures that are seen in Australia's weather patterns. Quote, some species are very tolerant of flooding and waterlogged soils and are much more drought sensitive, while other species are more drought tolerant. Spotted gums and ironbarks can take up as much water as they want, grow lots of leaves, and then flower heavily. This summary was sourced from the Good News Network. Wherever you are, I hope you get to see the sky today, and that the bright blue expanse, or the stars in the dark night sky, or the clouds that hold the moisture around you, help you remember that you are among an atmosphere, that it is vast and changing, just like you and your world. If you are one of the millions of people around the globe summoning your bravery to interrupt, yell, record through mass cruelty, or to call your representatives, to blockade entrances, to prepare an airtight legal case, to fund the workers who do all these things, to show up to a protest, to write your local representatives, to write your local paper, to feed someone whose family members have just been disappeared, to share what you have with a neighbor, to have a hard conversation with someone you love, to sit with grief with someone else. Thank you. The news is a lot, so much to face and take in, but we don't have to do it alone. We can do it together. As I continue this big transition and integration, I'll return with a news update for you in the coming weeks. If you want to help sustain this offering and make it possible for me to get behind paywalls, offset some of the many hours it takes for me to create a summary each time, there's 3 ways you can help. First, if you're one of the many people struggling to pay your bills, and I know more people are struggling every week, Keep your money in your bank account. And you can help support by sharing with your people via text or socials or email. Give a 5-star review if you're listening via podcast. That really helps. And if you have the financial means and want to support this offering, I welcome your support by becoming a paid subscriber. You can do that via Substack, and the link is at the bottom of the Substack email. Thanks to those of you who are already paying supporters. I've included some bonus content at the bottom of the Substack, a link to 2025 Environmental Photography Awards, some of which are truly stunning. Thanks for joining me, all. I'm rooting for you. Until next time, be well.